I was getting ready to release a video showing the Ossidon is more powerful than the Rex, and then they went and buffed it by 35%. What? Now it's insane. Also, they made it easier to tame. Today, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the Ossidon, including a step-by-step strategy on how to tame it effectively, because you will absolutely want to get your hands on one of these. Let me start by giving the taming overview. Then I'll talk about tips and a good strategy afterwards. First, you're going to need to trank it. Once its torpor reaches halfway, it will get stunned. It has an animation for it, and you will see these blue swirlies around its head. You have a limited amount of time to go up to it and ride it. Once on its back, you'll see the indicators on your screen. The first is number of icicles you need to collect. The second is time you have to do it. And the third is the number of dinos you need to collect in your goop ball. The meter on the bottom shows the taming percentage on the left and the taming effectiveness on the right. The higher the level, the more icicles and dinos you'll need to collect. Every 10 seconds, he shoots out icicles, and your goal is to roll around this ball, picking them up as well as dinos into your ball. You can pick up both wild and tamed, including babies, up to a certain drag weight of, and they stay in there for about, so you can reuse them once they come out. You can just roll back over them. Once the timer reaches 0 or you collect all that you need, you'll be thrown off its back, in which there will be a short cooldown before you can trank him again. But then it's rinse and repeat. Trank to halfway and repeat the process. Each icicle and dino you collect slowly increases taming percentage and taming effectiveness. When you hop on its back, it drops the effectiveness, so you have to hit all the numbers to get the effectiveness back up. To get 100%, you'll need to hit these numbers every round, every time. Rocks and trees will be crushed, but if you run into a wall, the ball can break. It can also break on uneven surfaces as well as structures. Also, if you try to pick up a dino higher than the allowed drag weight, it will break as well. If you get knocked off it, you can re-trank it, but the taming effectiveness will go down. So these big boys can be pretty tanky for tranking them. It'll take approximately 14 shots with a primitive long neck and darts to get a level 50 to half torpor. And it'll take approximately 35 shots to get a level 150 there. The time in between riding it is the most dangerous, so you'll definitely want a better than primitive way to pump this guy full of tranks, or at the very least, you should be using shock darts. The difference between 14 shots and 7 shots against that level 50 is a whole lot of time for things to go wrong, and obviously that gets worse with a level 150. Getting 35 shots off before something else goes wrong is probably impossible in art, so you'll really want to find a good way to increase torpor per shot. Number 2, the type of dino you pick up doesn't matter. You can pick up any dino up to the drag limit. That includes tamed and wild ones. These things are a little squishy in the wild, so it can be very helpful to use your own tames to do this process so that they don't attack it while you're trying to do this. This also means that you don't need to find specific dinos or specific levels. I've tested this with stegos, fiomas, and dodos, both high level and low level, and they all gave me the same increases in taming effectiveness and taming percentage. So the creature type does not matter as long as it's within that drag weight limit. But if you do try to pick something up above that limit, it will kick you off its back. So be sure to know which dinos fall under the limit. Number 3, you can reuse dinos. It's a lot easier to isolate 5 dinos than to run around trying to find all of them that you need. Keep yourself in a small controlled area and just run in circles. These dinos will pop out after a certain amount of time, and you can just swing right around and grab them up again. They take very little damage in the ball, but they do take some damage from the icicles on the ground. The most damage, however, will be what they take when you get kicked off from the Ossidon itself. So it helps to have something a little more tanky like a stego, but if you wanted to bring 100 dodos in, it could be just as effective as a strategy. You'll just lose a bunch of them. Number 4, be prepared to get kicked off. You'll get kicked off when the timer reaches 0, when you hit both numbers, or when you run into a wall or a structure. If you get kicked off early, you'll lose some taming effectiveness, but the taming process just pauses. There is a short window before you can start tranking again, so you'll want to have a way to survive during this time. A stego works well because it's tanky and you can shoot off the back. You will get kicked off eventually, and you will have to survive it. The easiest way to get these without traps is having something to tank, but you don't need anything crazy. A non-imprinted Rex and Stego is more than good enough. You can see here my 2 Stegos, level 225 and level 150, wild tamed with no stats put into them. Against the level 150, Ossidon are taking only 29 damage per hit, while mate boosted, 43 damage without the boost. Even without that mate boost though, that's plenty tanky to survive as many hits as you need, really, as long as you're not using a primitive rifle and this is taking forever. Then against my Rex, it's doing 87 damage. Rexes are pretty easy to get up to over 10k health, so a quick calculation, 10,000 divided by 87, and with a measly 10k health Rex, you could easily take 114 hits. That is more than enough time to get this thing knocked out, to kite it into position, which I'll talk about next, or to keep it aggroed on something while you go clear the rest of the area. So a tank helps tame this thing, but you can use wild tame dinos to get that tank effect that you need. Alright, so they already made it easier to tame this thing by a lot, by making it so that wild dinos don't attack while taming. But they can still attack you when in between riding it, and if they are already aggroed, when you hop on, they'll still attack. So this strategy that I shared before the patch of clearing the area still very much applies. I'll make some slight adjustments at the end, but it's still the safest way to go about it. So let's start with that. Alright, so for the strategy, I just basically like to take the tips from the last section and make it into a nice step-by-step process. The hardest part about this is it dying from other wild creatures while you're trying to tame it. So we need to clear the area first. Before we do that though, you want to prepare, because as soon as you spot one, you'll need to act quickly or it could die. The best way to do this is with something tanky that you can shoot off the back of. Stegos are probably the best option, but anything you want to use that can tank some hits will work just fine. You are using these for more than just tanking, so you'll want to bring at least 3 of them. I recommend 5 to 7 if you're going after a higher level. Then you'll need something to clear the area. Any strong dino that you have should do the trick. This will also need to be tanky though, because it will be tanking some hits. A Rex is always perfect. You'll also want to bring a good weapon because you might be on the ground a bit or need precision shots if something like a wolf or an RG is attacking it. Make sure to have all of this on you when you set out to search for one. I'll give you a more detailed list in the next section. When you first find one, back out of render immediately. This way it won't die to wild dinos. Toss out your Stegos, clear out any enemy dinos nearby. Make sure you put your dinos on passive. You want to be as close as you can without going into the render of the Ossidon. But if for some reason you can't get them out close enough, that may not always be a possibility, you can do this step after. So you can just keep them in the cryo for now. But what you're going to want to do is you want to toss out your Rex and head towards the Ossidon and then just start clearing the area. I like to use rare flowers to draw any other loose dinos near me just to make sure I get anything, and also maybe pull some of them off of the Ossidon. Then you'll want to use your shotgun or whatever weapon you've brought to get the wolves or RGs or anything that isn't coming your way because it's fixated on the Ossidon. Obviously you don't want to just take your Rex and go bite it, so that's why you want a precision weapon so that you can get these individual dinos and actually clear the area. Once it is just the Ossidon, you can then kite it towards your Stego. I forgot that GCM was on here, but I'll show you in a second that a level 150 Rex can tank this no problem. So if you didn't have a chance to throw out your Stegos, you can just hop off quickly, make sure your Rex is on passive, and toss them out now. Obviously in PvP this doesn't work, so you'll have to be prepared, but on official PvE there is no cryo freeze, so you can do this. Then either hop on your Stego and start shooting it, or just do it from the ground if it's not aggro to you. And before I started tranking it, I finished off this last RG that came out of nowhere with my shotgun. Now the area was fully cleared and I could go after it and trank it. But this part is why having a better long neck, or shock darts at least, is going to be really helpful. The time you spend just trying to stun it is very risky. Other dinos can show up, it could attack you, it can move your dinos around pretty far and fall off a cliff or something, so speed is key. But here in this scenario, you can see it continuing to attack my Rex. It was a low enough level, so I knew that it just had a few more trank shots before I had to knock it down. So instead of hopping on my Stego and finishing it off, I just finished it off from the ground because I knew that would be faster. You can see how far this thing can push or even a Rex. So again, the faster that you can trank it, the better. Or if it is pushing when your dino's too far away, you could actually just go hop on and kite it back towards your central area, which I do in a second and I'll show you. So I specifically did this whole thing in an awkward area, for example, on a hill with lots of rocks, to show that it's really not that difficult. When it comes to the icicles, they shoot every 10 seconds. So facing uphill is much better than downhill. You can see they shoot pretty far downhill and you don't want to have to chase after those. Your goal is to just make circles. You want to keep this thing in a very nice, tight area. The dinos come out of this thing after a certain amount of time, so you just keep on moving around, collecting the same dinos over and over. The higher level the tame, the more dinos you're going to need to pick up to 20, I believe, for a 150. So this is why if you're taming those higher levels, it helps to bring more stegos. You can only scoop up 5 at a time, no matter the level. But if you have more than 5, it just makes it easier to keep collecting them over and over because some of them will be pushed out of position. It'll kick you off once you hit that full number or time runs out, so be sure to pay attention. If you are on a hill, it can launch you sideways and you will take fall damage, so keep that in mind. You'll have a small window before you can start tranking things again. And there is a visual indicator that shows if it was blocked. But you'll want to take this time to finish off any new wild dinos that join the party. This is why a shotgun or precision weapon comes in handy, again. And again here, you see it's pushing my stego really far away from that central area that I already cleared earlier. So this is why more and more wild dinos keep showing up. If this was a higher level that I'm trying to tame, this is where I would hop on the stego and kite it back to my central area. But since it is a lower level, I just ended up stunning it again because I knew that it only had 1 or 2 tranks to get there. And then I just rode it back to that area. But the goal is still the same. I'm trying to keep everything centralized. I want to keep all my dinos in this one small area, and I want to just keep doing circles, trying not to get too far away from the area that I cleared from the start. And what you also want to do as it pushes your dinos away is you can just scoop them back up and carry them over to your starting area again. The further away you get from that starting area that you made, where you cleared out the dinos, the more risky it's going to be running into more wild dinos, and it's just going to be harder to tame things. So keep it in a nice tight circle, small area, and just keep going in circles. Okay, so after the changes, it's a lot easier to tame. Not only do wild dinos not aggro to it, but they don't even do damage to the Ossidon while it's being tamed, it doesn't seem. So the biggest challenge of trying to keep it alive is not there anymore. However, it's still going to benefit you to clear the area first. Dinos can still kill it before you start the taming process, and dinos can still kill you in between the process. If a dino is aggro to you and you hop on its back, it will stay aggro to it for a little while. Also, large dinos will still break your ball. So to make sure you aren't running into things like Uties or mammoths, you'll still want to clear the area first. The stegos are just as useful as they were before the patch. The main purpose of them is to tank hits from the Ossidon, not from the wild dinos, although it does help. So this change doesn't really make the stegos any less necessary. A high-level Ossidon is still going to require you to have at least 5 of them, or something else tanky. Overall, the process doesn't change much at all. It'll still be safest to clear the area first, then use your own tames. If it is a lower level Ossidon, it'll just make things a lot easier to tame without doing a setup. So you could probably get away without using stegos if it's a low level. So you won't always have to bring your own tames if you do see one in the wild, but if you really want to be safe, it'll still help to follow these steps. The last thing I want to mention is taming a 150. It is very difficult because you need 20 dinos and 50 icicles each round. There is no room for error. This location that I showed that I'm doing it in wouldn't really be a good spot to do it unless you were able to perfectly get each icicle to shoot out uphill every time. It might be a little difficult to do. You might want to look for a better area, but it is likely going to be very challenging to get a perfect tame on a 150. A couple things to look out for. One, try to find one near flat ground or have your stego set up on flat ground, and then you can kite one towards that area. Remember, up on top of snowy mountain hills, you can always kite it off a cliff and down to somewhere more flat ground. And you can only pick up 5 of your dinos at a time, but if you bring more and spread them out, like 10 to 15, it'll just make your chances of being able to get them all easier, because you won't have to travel very far to get each one. And because there is no room for error, you really have to be precise with getting those icicles and then getting those dinos without having to go too long without getting them, otherwise the time's going to run out and you're not going to be able to get a full effectiveness. But they did also change how long they stay in the ball, so it went from 8 seconds down to 5 seconds. So they'll pop out a little faster, which means it's going to be easier to get up to that 20 a little bit faster as well. But still, very little room for error. This is going to take a lot of skill and a lot of practice. There's really no perfect strategy to do it. It's really just about keep doing it over and over. And always remember, you don't always have to go after a 150. If you go after a 130 or even a 120, it'll be a lot easier to tame, and you could get good RNG on your side and get the points put into where you want to. For armor, you don't need a lot. They spawn in the cold biomes and their icicles will freeze you, so keep in mind temperature, you may want fur. But primitive flak is plenty good for defense. You'll only be on the ground if you are chasing him down, and you shouldn't really need to take too many hits from him with just your character, so flak should be good. You'll need some kind of on-foot weapon. The primitive shotgun is perfectly fine, or anything really that has a little bit more precision than just using your Rex to take a bite. So like when an RG or a wolf is attacking, you can clear those out without injuring the Ossidon. A long neck, you'll definitely want the best possible long neck that you can get your hands on, but if you are using a primitive, you'll definitely want to be using shock darts. You'll want one Rex or something tanky with good attack for clearing the area, 3 to 6 stegos with saddles or something else tanky that you can shoot off the back of. And remember, these aren't just for tanking, but you're scooping them up in the ball. So 3 is a good minimum, but honestly having 5 makes things easier. And if you're going after a level 150, 6 or 7 is probably going to be the best. But the more the merrier. There's no harm in bringing 10 if you got them. Rare flowers. And this one is a little more optional, but it's definitely going to help you clear the area initially. First, we have the basic attack. Left click to perform a claw swipe. This does 95 base damage. That is after the 30% buff that they added after launch. It started at 70. For comparison, a Rex does 62, and I'll talk about this difference more in the stats section. The next move is the claw clap. After 2 consecutive swipes, it'll perform the claw clap, like a combo. This does twice as much damage, but it does take a little longer to perform. Next, we have Icicle Rain. This can be aimed by holding a right click and then launched with left click. The icicles do not damage as a projectile, but they give an area of effect attack on anyone inside them. It does approximately 3 damage per tick, and that does scale with melee. It lasts 60 seconds, and enemies will keep the frostbitten effect for a short while as they run out of it. Next, we have the Bolus, the giant ice dirt ball. This is started by pressing C. It can roll up enemy dinos and move them around, as well as damage them for 100 base. This also scales with melee. The ball cannot be thrown, but you can crash it into dinos for the damage, or anything inside it will take the damage when it breaks. This has a lower limit to drag weight, so you can't pick up as large of a dino as you can when you're taming, but you can increase the size of that and the damage output of the ball with improving stats. The Ossidon can jump, it can strafe, and it has a sharp turn ability that can be toggled on or off that makes you turn where you look with control. Monstrous Affection. The Ossidons gain trust with each rider individually. Every 90 seconds of being ridden by the same rider increases the Monstrous Affection stack buff by 1. Each stack increases every stat by 0.5% whenever that rider is riding. So while riding, the timer counts down. After 90 seconds, you get 1 stack. This is permanent, even after you get off, even after you cryo. It's like an imprint. If you get off before the 90 seconds, it just resets that current stack, but not the overall stacks. You can get up to 20 stacks for a maximum of 10% increase additionally on all stats while you're riding. So just 30 minutes of riding will permanently increase its stats by 10%. But again, only while you are riding, like an imprint. The Ossidon's abilities can all be improved by leveling individual attributes. Health increases the overall size and number of victims the Ossidon can carry in its bolus. Stamina increases the head crest size and the duration the Ossidon can roll its bolus. Oxygen increases the fur and the distance Ossidon can fire its icicle rain. Food increases stomach size and the number of icicles the Ossidon can fire during its icicle rain. Weight increases muscle size and the maximum creature size the Ossidon can absorb into its bolus. And the melee damage increases claw size. These things were already stronger than a Rex. They went and buffed its health by 30% and its melee by 35%. Now it's insane. But it kind of makes sense because you currently cannot breed these. But once you can, oh my god. So it already had the exact same health as a Rex. Now it has 30% more. There isn't any sort of damage debuffs or anything that I've been able to find. So it appears to just flat out be 30% better than a Rex for HP. The damage got a 35% increase, but it was already better. Before you can see, the Rex doing 314 per attack with 629 DPS, and the Ossidon doing about 709 DPS. And this didn't include the 10% increase in stats that you can get from its passive. Now, this is the difference. At 514% melee, the Ossidon is doing 488 per hit, or 977 DPS. The Rex, with the same melee, is doing 320 per hit, or 641 DPS. A couple things to consider here. The Rex does 15% more damage to herbivores. That includes the Megapithecus boss, but that's not factored in here. Still, even with that, this buff made the Ossidon stronger in every way. This also doesn't include the 10% passive stack for the Ossidon. I do have the stack, but it's factored into the melee that I used. The point is that at equal levels, the Ossidon is just purely stronger. Then it has a way to further increase its damage on top of that with the passive. Like I said, no breeding with these yet. You will be able to breed them with Lost Colony when that releases, and you can babyfy them in the Mega Lab to get an imprint. Honestly though, even now before breeding, these are so strong you can definitely use these to boss. And yes, they do go into the boss terminals. So it looks like we finally have something to replace the Rex. The Ossidon spawns in cold biomes on Ragnarok, Velguero, and the Center. That is pretty vague. I do apologize for not being more specific. There doesn't seem to be any maps that have been updated so far. Typically I use the Wiki or Arc Unity, both good options once they are updated. For my own personal testing, I have been using the Gene Scanner on Ragnarok mostly, and I have been seeing them show up fairly commonly. So it doesn't appear to be super rare, but you will likely have to fly around the cold areas on those maps and give a look. And once Lost Colony drops, it sounds like they will be exclusive to that map. Alright, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it helped or you found it useful. I plan to make a lot more Lost Colony guides and content, so if you found this useful, make sure to like and subscribe and keep an eye out for that. We'll see you on the next one.